It's a fast-moving news day today for Thursday. First of all, the Bank of England this morning gives 100 billion extra in quantitative easing. The forces sweetheart from the Second World War, Dame Vera Lynn, dies at 103. Dominic Raab sets Twitter alight with all about his thoughts on bending the knee. All this and more on The Voice of London. Hello and welcome to another Voice of London show with me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK television and positivebritain.co.uk. Well, to say it's a fast news day really doesn't give it any justice at all. We first of all start with the Bank of England this morning giving an extra 100 billion in quantitative easing. Now, is this just printing money to help the government out of trouble? Or what is going to really happen, I think, this year? At the moment, the government has to buy its way out of trouble. The reality with a lot of businesses at the moment is they're going to need huge amounts of support in all areas. And we will be talking about the theatre industry and the entertainment industry in a little while. So for the Bank of England, and obviously for the gold vaults within the Bank of England as well, that supports the economy and supports this quantitative easing, it's another big challenge. But they are saying at the moment they're happy to have 300 to 400 billion of extra loans right now to actually help Britain get out of the situation it may face itself in by September, with massive redundancies, perhaps up to 3 million people unemployed, and a lot of businesses looking for government help. So we move on from that and we move to the forces sweetheart, Dame Vera Lynn, who has sadly died this morning at 103 years of age, surrounded by her family. Now, Dame Vera Lynn really was known throughout the whole of the Second World War. She went to jungle locations, she went to some very dangerous places just to sing to the troops and keep them with their spirits up at the same time. She had a most famous song of "We Will Meet Again," and in fact even the Queen used that message as part of her recent message when she was talking about the effects of lockdown to families in this country. So I remember my father talking about her, and I remember seeing a lot of videos about her in her later years as well. And she is the icon. She was one of the main icons of the Second World War and one of the icons of bravery, true bravery of the British nation. So she will be sadly missed. And now we move on from, I can't believe what the government is doing at the moment. I wonder whether coronavirus has actually affected their minds nowadays. Dominic Raab this morning was on a very simple broadcast, radio broadcast, and he was asked by the presenter, would you take the knee? In other words, this Black Lives Matter really pose to actually sort of show that you can actually listen and work with Black Lives Matter and black people in communities in Britain at the same time, taking the knee. And Dominic Raab, first of all, thought that taking the knee had nothing to do with an American football player 5 or 6 years ago who took the knee during the national anthem in the United States, which is where taking the knee first started. He just thought this had come from the Game of Thrones, this whole situation. And when he was asked, would you ever take the knee yourself? In other words, would you join in collaborating with Black Lives Matter in this country? His glib reply was, I only would bend a knee to the Queen and to my wife. What happened? Within minutes, Twitter came alight with indignation at what he was actually sort of saying and portraying really that the Black Lives Matter movement and taking the knee was for something. Perhaps would he take it seriously? And what happened within an hour? Yes, he was back on Twitter himself, apologizing and saying that obviously he thought that Black Lives Matter. Now, why is this important? This is important because now DFID, which is the funding for charities and for organizations to be given to overseas countries, he now takes it over. So some of the major African states that we wish to do business with in the future, they look at things like this morning where he's really saying, well, what if, if I don't support Black Lives Matter? What if I just make a joke of taking the knee? Which is really what he was saying with a smile this morning. How do you think for 1 second that black African states will actually take this in the future? All these things are remembered. So Mr. Raab, and I took him as one of the more serious politicians, I think he realizes he's made a major gaffe today, and I hope he responds in a way that actually shows that people of colour in Britain really do matter to us all. And now President Macron is coming to London today as well. Now Dominic Raab is due to meet Macron as part of the Brexit negotiation team. Macron is coming over because 80 years ago to this day, President de Gaulle, who was then just General de Gaulle, made a very famous broadcast from London talking about how to support the French resistance during the Second World War. And so his visit has really been seen as something to actually highlight that memory. But in reality, no doubt they'll be talking about fishing rights and all the other things, because it's the French, I feel, that may be the sticking point at the moment to Brexit talks. And so no doubt there will be a lot of negotiations over a nice lunch in 10 Downing Street for that. So now we move back to business again and to really theatre land in London. Not only in London, but right across Britain. Because Cameron Mackintosh, one of the biggest impresarios, is now saying that none of his theatres, none of his shows will open up again till next year. And it is feared that a lot of theatres up and down the country will not be able to support themselves and will now have to close because of all the issues during coronavirus, self-isolation, self-distancing at the same time. And Oliver Dowden, who is the Culture Secretary, he is saying now that he's going to try and find ways of actually sort of working with Mackintosh and other theatres up and down the country to actually create some sort of support mechanism that will keep theatres going, because it's very, very big business. Theatres and that type of entertainment in London brings into the economy £12 billion each year. And Dowden at the same time is now sort of saying that he's trying very, very hard to sort of make the culture work back in Britain again. It's very important for tourism at the same time. And he's very pleased to sort of say he hopes by the middle of July that football fans will be able also to go back to stadiums, or at least for the start of next season in September. So it is a massive plus. And I think last night when we were watching the first football matches that were happening, without any crowds at all, then at least now Britain can have some football coming back again. And finally, after Oliver Dowden, has sort of said about how he's trying to sort of save money and actually sort of give it theatre land and entertainment in Britain, because it's the second largest industry. Tourism, theatres, entertainment of all sorts. It all comes under his remit. So he is looking now to sort of spend, I think, big sums of money as well to really help British culture come back together again. Apart from hospitality and tourism. It is the second largest business in this country right now, or was, I should say, before lockdown. And finally, Boris Johnson. Dear old Boris Johnson has decided he wants to turn grey into red, white and blue. So he has his own plane that he flies around the world in. And the reality at the moment is that he actually wants to paint this plane, he wants to spray this plane red, white and blue. Okay. He wants it to be patriotic, and apparently some of the royal family use this plane at times as well. You know, and he's seen strutting out of this plane. But how much is it going to cost? It's going to cost £900,000 to spray this plane red, white and blue. Now, I'm as patriotic as everyone else, but in austere times like this, and there will be coming back from austerity over the past 10 years, to spend £900,000 when perhaps the NHS could do with that money as well. I just think it's a fantasy, and it's just really another highlight of where is this British government at the moment. So we're going to stop there, and we're going to have a short break, and very shortly we're going to have the second half of the show where two guests will come on, and it is Male Mental Health Week this week. And so this week we're going to talk to these two experts about how men should feel during lockdown. We'll see you again shortly. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the second half of the Voice of London show today. It is Male Mental Health Week this week, and so we have back two guests that we had on last week, Rigurta Mackintosh and Claire Copleston from Meaningful Education. And we're going to talk about how do we get men to talk. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question.
I was going to say, do you have any suggestions?
Because I talk for Britain. It's my job after all that. But being quite serious at the moment, what are the main aspects that you see that when you're sort of encountering male mental health at the moment, what are the type of things that really you feel affect men, and how do you try to deal with them?
We actually had this conversation yesterday with a well-known artist, and we were discussing this at length. But one of the points that were brought up is the pressure that men do have in households. They're seen to be the main point of contact for the whole family. They need to keep strong. You know, they need to provide. They need to make sure that they're always on track with what they're doing because they're head of the household almost. And that pressure is always there. They don't want to be seen as weak. And for some reason, it's, you know, come across in society when talking about your emotions or about your feelings, that it's a sign of weakness.
But do women think men who talk about their emotions are weak?
No,
no. We had that discussion. No.
Yeah.
Personally, no. I don't know about other women, but no.
I mean, it goes back to that misconception, isn't it? It's around, you know, emotions are connected to femininity, and for a man to show emotions, it shows a more feminine side, when actually it's a misconception. And I think it's important for males, whether you're an adult man or whether you're a young person, to acknowledge, embrace and to talk about your emotions and your feelings. Naturally, for some reason within households, it's become taught within families that men are not to talk or express their emotions, and I think that it's not good for your health mentally or physically, because what happens over time is you then start to suppress those emotions and those thoughts and those feelings, and over time that then increases your risk to having mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, and that's not a good place to be in mentally or physically. So I think we need to encourage men and young boys to openly talk about emotions and feelings, and to acknowledge that it's okay to talk about that as well.
I mean, do you think that the anxiety during this lockdown period, this isolation, has that increased the amount of male mental health that you're seeing now?
Absolutely. We've seen an increase during the coronavirus pandemic. In fact, 1 in 8 men will experience depression and 1 in 3 will experience anxiety. And I think that number will probably have changed during this pandemic. I think that we have discussed this at length, and I think that sometimes when we keep so busy all the time, we don't have time to acknowledge those thoughts and feelings and those emotions. And particularly during this time, it's a time of reflection, it's a time of self-isolation, and we are left alone more so with our thoughts. So I think that then evokes all those kind of those situations and those feelings that we've suppressed then start to come to the surface. So there has been an increase in what we've seen and the amount of work that we've been doing over this time.
A lot there has been, especially within our groups and our services that we provide. We've had a lot of feedback, and we've had a lot of people come forward to say that this time and the isolation has really, for them, it's impacted their mental health, especially through depression.
Does it make people come to terms with where they are in their lives, and perhaps it's not where they want to be? That perhaps one of the things of lockdown or coming out of it is, will our expectations become less? In other words, then the pressure becomes less in that way.
I think so, and I think what we've noticed is there's kind of 2 trends going on right now. People have identified that they need to make significant change in their lifestyles, or you've got those that have struggled because they want to get back to their old lifestyles. And there's been a quite two-way streak, hasn't there, with that?
There really has, and people also, where I've seen in my circles anyway, who have said that they've been spending money on ridiculous things during the years, where now when they're in lockdown, they're like, oh really, you know, this is where my money has been going, or this is what I've been doing. So it goes back to lifestyle. It's almost looking at, has this benefited me all this time? Do I need to change anything? What am I looking at? And I think in some aspects, career-wise as well, I think a lot of people have probably realised that maybe this isn't the right path, or this is the right path, sort of thing.
Just going off of that, actually, what Roberta's just said, I think what is a contributing factor as well to poor mental health during this time is the economy, people losing jobs, financial cuts, and that puts stress and pressure. And if you're a male that is the predominant kind of earner in your household, that's an enormous amount of pressure for somebody to feel. So I just think that is something that is a major contributing factor at this moment.
So as an organisation, Meaningful Education, what are you saying to men right now that are the answers to situations that you're finding them in?
So some of the things that we do is, one, we are actively talking to people on a daily basis, and we have a service where people can phone and they can talk to myself, Roberta, and other therapists within our service. And it's important to know that it is confidential and that, you know, there is absolutely no pressure and you can talk about whatever you want to talk to us about. So there is that kind of space to be able to have that freedom and a safe place to be able to talk about what you're feeling and what you're going through. Another thing that we also work on is focusing on your meaningful daily activities, creating healthier routines. Because where people were busy prior to the lockdown, people have now had lots more time on their hands, they're reflecting and, you know, they're not as positive, or their self-worth has lowered in themselves. So we look at, you know, the positive aspects and just looking at what they're connected to, their interests, their likes, their hobbies, creating healthier routines in their day-to-day and giving focus and meaning to their day. And that is really having a positive effect. We always recommend sleeping, you know, so having a good, healthy kind of balance on your sleep, 7 to 8 hours a day, where possible.
Also with food.
Healthy, balanced diet.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are times that as an organisation, we've gone out and delivered food to our groups just to make sure, because we know some of them don't cook. Some of them don't. They seem to neglect themselves, even in the most basic areas, as we say.
Do you find sometimes people are ashamed of where they are now, and then they find it even hard to talk to people like yourselves as well?
We have discussed this yesterday, funny enough.
We actually did. There was a story about this, wasn't there?
Yeah.
The artist we were talking to, he said that one of his friends, a male friend, was locked out of his home, and him and some other friends went and opened the house and helped him go in, but realised he didn't have a bed and didn't have all the other essentials in there. But they would have never known because he's never spoken about it. And when asked, do you need any help? He said, no, I'm fine. When in fact they knew he wasn't okay. You know, he wasn't eating properly or looking after himself properly either. So it was an example of how much we probably don't even know.
What you share.
Yeah.
But we did say that sometimes, particularly with men, is sometimes it comes down to your dignity and your self-pride. And sometimes asking for help can impact on your dignity, and that can make you feel quite vulnerable. And when somebody feels vulnerable, it puts you in this kind of scary situation that we don't always like to acknowledge. And so I think sometimes in order for somebody to preserve their dignity, they don't like to ask for help.
I mean, you know, in my case, as I said to you 15 years ago, I was in an isolated situation myself, and in a very vulnerable situation as well in my time. And it was only when I reached out and I asked for help that my life changed. You know, this lockdown period for me has meant nothing. That's the reality to it. The only thing that I feel I'm embarrassed about now is a lot of the people who I was meeting before and I didn't really sort of keep in contact with during, you know, that period, because I assumed they all felt like me.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking again and I'm hearing how it's been really affecting them at the same time, you know, I felt I should have perhaps reached out and done more at that time. But I think it is important, you know, and I can say it straight to camera, men talk.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest message, and we're doing a fantastic job in, you know, many media outlets in putting out the slogan, it's good to talk, and, you know, there's a saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, and I think when we talk, sometimes we feel like a weight's been lifted off of our shoulders. And also as well, it's good to discuss these things with other people, because sometimes we can't make sense of it in our own head, because you know, we can't think logically because we're consumed with all these thoughts and feelings. So sometimes when you do speak about these things that we're going through with somebody else, it helps to just to clear that and to give us a more clearer view and an understanding.
And it's also the perception somebody else might have. You know, the experiences somebody else has had in their lives could give you a different perception you've never thought about. And then that can go from one thought to another, because it's tunnel vision, isn't it? Once you're in a situation, it's just you and that problem. And if somebody else comes in, they can completely take you into a different route.
I totally agree, and I think probably one of the biggest messages that comes out this week in Male Mental Health Week is there are answers, there are ways forward, and I think personally I feel a prime example of that, where 15 years ago, when I went through troubled times, I used to wake up every morning shaking. I hadn't been drinking or anything like that. It was just physically anxious about the day. And I think it was only when I started reaching out. And women, to me, have different strengths to men. But when you combine the strengths of men and women together, then it really is something very, very powerful at the same time. And it's only when I sort of reached out and women helped me that I came back to life. And as I can say nowadays, I have one of the most successful careers ever imaginable. I would never have imagined 15 years ago I was a journalist, but a print journalist. That 15 years on, you know, I'd be having TV channels and talking to people right across the world with it, and working with the Albanians and working with causes like this as well. It is very, very, I think, important these days for men to realise is that you can pick yourselves up from doing something like this. But the best way for me, and I would suggest for most men, is to talk, ask for help. When you it's almost like face your fears, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Once you sort of start to face your fears, they don't really become fears anymore. They just become objectives that you have to overcome. And I think, if I'm really honest, I love women. I love womanhood. Women have much more common sense, you know? Women have much more common sense. You know, and a man sometimes he can get sort of isolated or focused one on a thing, and the women, why worry? Why bother about do this? So I think it's very, very important, you know, that in sort of weeks like this as well, because it is going to be a very different future. But presumably, what you must be picking up as well is that fathers, you know, men with families as well, it must be affecting the children just as much as it's affecting the parents.
Just picking up on something you said actually about, you know, you openly started to talk about how you felt. You often find that it just needs somebody to start that conversation, for then somebody to realise that they're not the only person going through this. They're not isolated by themselves. And that's what when we've spoken with groups, you know, our male groups, it's exactly that key point. It just takes one person in that group to just say, you know what, I've had a bad day, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what I'm going through. And then it starts to encourage, you know, others to start openly talking about. And people can then start to relate, and they realise, you know what, I'm not alone, I'm not going through this by myself. And then that actively encourages that open conversation. So it's really important. And actually, with the pandemic, there's been an increase in male suicides, particularly. And in fact, suicide is the highest mortality rate for men under the age of 45. So it's extortionately high.
And it's so high. It shocked me when I looked at the statistics, actually, because I just thought, you know, maybe we don't talk enough about it. I know we're telling men to talk, but maybe as organisations or as campaigns, we don't talk enough about it. I know there are campaigns, but when I look at it and it shocks me, and we're in the industry, I think, why does that shock me? You know, why shouldn't we know more? And why shouldn't there be more word about it?
I think it's only when you face this type of thing and you see this thing, you know, for me, I look at what's going to be the future at the moment. How are men going to deal with coming out of a lockdown situation, first of all? How are they going to adapt to, perhaps there won't be a job out there for them. You know, how are they going to adapt to a future? At the same time, it's not going to be an easy time at all. What do you think gives men strength?
I think it's important for a man to know that they have support, and it's important to have an active circle of support. For instance, one thing that we do encourage is identify those people that have your best interests, those people that you can go to when you're feeling different feelings. So, for instance, if you're feeling really kind of down and fed up and, you know, you need to lift that mood, then have that one friend who you know is going to make you laugh, who's going to lift you up, who's going to, you know, have a giggle and have good conversations.
Absolutely.
Because laughter is fantastic for your mental health. It's a great big injection of, you know, those endorphins in the brain that we need, and it enhances those feel-good feelings. And so think about the right people that you have around you, because you don't want to feel kind of down, or, you know, you're struggling with depression, and then, you know, you go and have a conversation with somebody and then they're just like, well, pull yourself out of it, you know, pull yourself together, because that's the wrong thing to say, and it's not helpful. And what that person is thinking and feeling is valid to that person. So surround yourself with people that are going to be supportive, non-judgmental, and can be there to just be a listening ear and offer emotional support, or people that can actively do things to help you.
Yeah, and also the fact that vulnerability is not a weakness.
No.
Emotion is not a weakness.
No.
I feel like, and I know we had this discussion yesterday, but as a woman, to see vulnerability and see emotion is more security in that sense. There's not a red flag there. You know, it's seen as a strength. And I'll say that, you know, it is seen as a strength if a man is vulnerable, if he is showing emotion. And it shouldn't be, I know in my culture it's a bit like, you know, you can't be too emotional.
And you see, you know, and we talk about these things, and I must admit I have some interesting conversations, let's call it that, with male Albanians at times. You know, I suppose I come from a different attitude, you know, more than anything. And you know, for me, I think it's important that, as you so rightly say, that men become stronger, I feel, through really talking through their problems. That's masculinity for me. You know, that's being brave, and being fearless in being able to sort of talk about these things at the same time. So when you're doing your seminars and, you know, your group meetings, what happens during these meetings? You know, what type of things do you do?
Sometimes we've found that it's like that light bulb moment, isn't it? For some people, like, oh my God, really? Like, I can talk about these things, or
they don't feel restricted, do they? No, which is a good thing. And
they go out feeling so uplifted, because sometimes it might be the first time they've actually spoken about an issue or a situation. And I know that even in our personal lives, I've got two sons. You know, they're like late teenage and young man, and you just try to encourage them and have open conversations. And it goes back to that education, teaching this at home. It's okay to cry, it's okay to talk about, you know, what you're going through. That doesn't make you weak, that doesn't make you any less of a person. It's important that you share within your households what's going on. And I think, you know, when we do our group sessions, some people go out like they're walking on cloud nine. You know, it's just that weight lifted off of them.
And we don't restrict them in the sense of you can speak about what you want, you can ask what you want. We've had controversial conversations on there because you know, with everything going on in the media, it's like they wanted to address a few things and wanted to open up about how they're feeling. And, you know, everyone had different views, and it was nice because by the end of that conversation, they left with a different perspective that they didn't come in with. And, you know, they really appreciate it, especially being in the groups that they are. And I know they're isolated at the moment, but they are so open with us. And we see the benefits from it at the end of the day, through them anyway, you know. Yeah. It doesn't, it benefits us in different ways, but them, that's our aim, it's always with them.
And picking up your point, obviously mothers, we all support the Albanian group Successful Mothers as well.
Absolutely.
And I think it is very important for mothers to be very strong, I would say, right now, because, you know, mothers have to take a lot of strain in the first place. Women have to take a lot of strain during a situation like this. And I think this is where womanhood really comes to the forefront. You know, that a lot of the time they can actually help support men through this period in their lives as well. Where would you hope weeks like this, Male Mental Health Week, will help men, and where would you like to be more involved in this as well?
I think it's really good in terms of bringing men's health to the forefront of our minds, and also it's around raising awareness and educating young boys and men that, you know, find out what health screening checks or what health checks you can get, because and at different stages of your age and what stage you are in your life, because, you know, if you look at things like prostate cancer, it's not often diagnosed soon enough because men aren't aware that they can go for checks, or they feel it's not going to affect them. So it's really about, you know, just raising awareness, educate yourself around your own health and your own well-being, find out what's available to you, and you can do that by having a discussion with your GP, your doctor, or within a pharmacy, and just look at your lifestyle and look at what's working well, what's not working well, and what you think that you can change. There's always different things that you can do in your day-to-day within your lifestyle, and it's just about identifying the changes that you need to make.
I suppose as well, listen to each other if you're in a relationship or in a family situation. And, you know, as I said to you before, for me, Albanian communities, Albanian families are incredible. You know, the strength within them, the resolve within them, that there is a bond that I haven't seen since my childhood, you know, from a typical Albanian family as well. So just finally today, again, I should ask you, how can people get in contact with you? Because that's very important as well.
Well, they can get in contact with us through our social medias. All they would have to do is type in Meaningful Education, and we come up on Twitter, on Facebook and Instagram, and also on our website, which is www.meaningfuleducation.org.uk.
And what type of seminars, events are in the future for you? You know, what type of things are you doing yourselves at the moment, and perhaps over the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah. We've actually discussed this yesterday. We're trying to.
You're doing a lot yesterday.
Yeah, no, we had a very busy day.
I should have been with you yesterday.
we really did. We had a packed out day, which is good because we haven't had one in a while. But we were discussing this yesterday because we want to look at doing more content for social media. So filming videos with influencers and podcasts, and actually bringing out topics just like the Men's Health Week, and discussing topics just like we have today that are a little bit undiscussed, if I must say. But that's our plan.
We want to do more media, but also one of the things that we have done consistently throughout our time with Meaningful Education is we start from very young ages doing education. So we go into schools and community centres and we do mental health awareness, and we do teach children, young people, how to sense how we feel. So understanding emotions, not being afraid of emotions, thinking about how we respond to emotions. So we do start, you know, that early intervention, we always say is your long-term prevention. So if we can start to identify areas of need, such as, you know, male mental health or male physical health, if we can start to teach young boys from an early age how to identify and connect with their emotions, I think it equips them with the tools and the understanding going forward into their adulthood. Every single year we always support Men's International
Men's Day, yeah.
International Men's Day.
As well as International Women's Day.
Yeah, and we do conferences, and we've also, we do a conference every year around dignity, and one of the topics we always bring up is around mental health and physical health and dignity. So
I think the next topic is going to have to be mental health, men's mental health, for our dignity conference.
So I suppose in reality it's taking the fear out of facing your fears, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and that's the future. Thank you so much for coming on again. As always, it's been extremely interesting, and especially during this week as well. And I hope you'll come on more regularly and talk about things that are very, very important to people who watch these programs as well. So thank you very much for your time again today. So, a very long but a very interesting Voice of London show today. It's been such a hot news show today with all the things that are happening at the same time. But from the two ladies from Meaningful Education and from myself, from me, Ian Pelham Turner, from the Voice of London, from ALB UK Television and PositiveBritain.co.uk, I hope you have a great day, and we will see you again next week. Take care.